Alright everyone, welcome to the Lockup Shutdown Offseason. My name's Monica, joining me as always is my good friend Zach. It's our first ever offseason episode and our first ever recap episode as we recap our debut season. Now that it's finally said and done, tell me Zach, how's it going tonight?
It's going good. We've not got any games to be either analyzing or looking on really, but we still got plenty of news to talk about. The NFL always keeping us on our toes and keeping us entertained, probably more than any other league around the country, for better or for worse. So let's get to it, and we can probably spend some time looking back on what we did earlier this season, as well as looking up to what might be in the next months to come.
Indeed we will. Today, we'll recap our brackets and picks from the season, break down our absolute best takes, and maybe even some of our worst, and we'll look forward to what's ahead going into the 2023 season and off-season. But let's start this off-season off then, and talk about our overall performance from our lightning-fast picks. I have gathered and compiled every single game that we have predicted, and here is the conclusions. Are you ready, Zach?
I'm ready. Been waiting a long time for these.
So, we have a deficit of 5 games apart. One of us won this year by 5 games predicted correctly. So we'll start off with my own. This season, overall, I was 112 and 78 and 1 because there was a tie, and, well, what does that count as for us? I was 7 and 6 in the playoffs. My best week this season was in week 5, which was the first week that we debuted Lightning Fast Picks. And week 15 was also tied with week 5 at 12 and 4. My worst week on the season, however, was on the complete opposite end of the spectrum, because my worst week was at a solid 5, 8, and 1, which is pretty terrible if you ask me. Whoever was betting on me last week, or whatever that week was, I am terribly sorry. Why were you betting on amateur sports take individuals? But Zach,
well, how's mine? I'm hoping it's not 5 games worse than whatever you just said.
Well, let's start by talking about your playoff record rather than your overall record.
Oh yeah, let's talk about that. Cincinnati Bengals making a run all the way to the Super Bowl, and unfortunately Joe Shiesty not able to get it done. But hey, he got me a couple of wins along the way, and congratulations to the Bengals on that Super Bowl run, and I guess I'll say congratulations to the Rams as they did win that Super Bowl, even though they spent about $1 billion signing players to get to that point.
It certainly helps that you were 6-0 in the wild card round, and that you were completely perfect on your picks, at least on the AFC side of the bracket. And in total in the playoffs, you finished at a solid 9-4. Your best week of the season, apart from the obvious wild card round, was week 17, in which you had a solid 14 out of 16 games predicted correctly.
Oh man!
The other two,
I guess you gotta be at your best when it counts the most at the end of the season, and I did that week 17 and in the playoffs.
Your worst week of the season was hardly something to be considered a bad week, because you finished that week at a solid 8-7.
Yeah, that's not a bad week to never go below 500 for the entirety of the season. So I guess I'll take that as a win for this season and try and keep it up.
It's a pretty safe bet to make some bets based on your own predictions. But overall, over the course of the season, you had a total of 117 games predicted correctly. You were 117, 73, and 1 on the season. And you are the the winner, the champion. Is this even a competition? I really don't know about this.
You know what? Everyone needs a trophy now in the year 2022, so let's not call me the winner. Let's say it was a friendly competition and we both walk away winners.
Yeah, that's fair. We did finish very close in terms of our predictions, and overall we did pretty good. I wouldn't consider it amazing, but we have a lot to improve on going into the next year, and I can guarantee you we're going to be a hell of a lot better. 50 incorrect predictions at max. Tell you what.
Yeah, let's say we'll be able to start it from week 1 at this time and hopefully get even better. Although who knows, maybe week 1 will trick us, and I know on our podcast we might not have been the most accurate starting in week 1, but hey, as the season wears on, you learn more and more about each player and each team, and that's what we'll try and do in this off-season version of the podcast, so that we'll be ready in week 1 for those lightning fast predictions.
Absolutely. I'm certainly looking forward to trying to win the friendly competition next year. Let's talk about all of our takes from this season. We have had a lot, and I mean a lot, of takes this season. We have an average of 6 questions every single episode, and we each have to give a take on every single question. Sometimes we hit, sometimes we miss. That's just kind of part of the occupation here. Let's talk about some of our best takes from the season. I cannot speak today. Let's talk about some of our best takes. First off, let's start with this one here. Despite their struggles and my total bias against the Chiefs, I held faith in week 4 that they'd make up for their slow start in the season. And clearly that was at the time they were 1-2, nearly 0-3 if they didn't have a blocked punt against the Browns. The Chiefs weren't looking to be the same Chiefs. The AFC West was looking to be the most competitive division in the entire league, and overall was just no one really thought that the Chiefs were going to make the playoffs. However, I stuck with them. And sure enough, second seed in the AFC, made it to the conference championship to lose to Joe Shiesty. I'd call that an absolute win by the Chiefs on a prediction where you said at this point the Raiders seem more likely to make the playoffs than Kansas City.
Yeah, the Kansas City Chiefs looked pretty bad in the beginning of the season. The 2-man safety, no blitzing on Patrick Mahomes seemed to work wonders, and then as a great quarterback does, he figured it out and progressed well throughout the season and was able to keep that momentum up until the AFC Championship, as you mentioned. So credit to the Chiefs. I should have realized Patrick Mahomes has done that his whole career maybe, and maybe not said that the Raiders are going to make the playoffs, but to be fair, the Raiders did have their own fair share of obstacles that they had to get over. Well, whether that was self-imposed obstacles or not, they had plenty of stuff to get through, and the Chiefs did a better job of that, and credit to them, and I'll learn about that for next year. Don't doubt Patrick Mahomes.
In your defense, the Raiders did make the playoffs this year. Whether or not that was deserved, just ask whoever decided to call that timeout in overtime. Let's talk about Week 13, where I started off my campaign in saying that Tampa Bay and the Buccaneers and Tom Brady, who we had at the time thought was going to be MVP, were going to be divisional round exits. I said that exact quote, and it was in the intro last week. You should check that episode out. Then, the divisional round comes around. And sure enough, it is the LA Rams and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We're going through our lightning bracketeering segment, and what do I say? The Rams are going to upset the Buccaneers. We all know what happened there. The Rams are Super Bowl champions, and Tom Brady is sitting on his couch with his kids nowadays. So,
yep, that was Tom Brady's last ever NFL game, which is unfortunate for a lot of NFL fans, but credit to you in getting that one right. It seemed crazy to think about at that point, but you did have that Antonio Brown situation before the end of the season, which I'm sure played a role, as well as Chris Godwin not being able to play. So whether there was different reasons for it or not, you were right, and the Rams might have got the ugliest win I've ever seen a team get in a divisional round game, but a win is a win, especially when it's playoff time, and that's why they've got a Super Bowl ring on their fingers now. So credit to them and credit to you for that one.
just blame prevent defense, really. Also in week 13, because we had a big bright thumbnail saying something along, I don't know, I don't even remember what that thumbnail said. Put it on the screen, Noah. That's what it says, right there. Very negative. But it has two players on it. It's not just Brady, but it's Stephon Diggs. Because in week 13, I had also said that the Bills wouldn't find themselves going far in the playoffs if they weren't prepared after they had such a cupcake schedule this season. And clearly, as proven by the Kansas City Chiefs beating them to go to the conference championship, they weren't ready for the Chiefs this year. They weren't ready for the playoffs this year. And clearly, I had something going on there.
I don't want to say you got anything going on there. I think it's the Buffalo Bills playing who's in their division, and when your division's AFC East, well, then you don't have to play as many good teams as some other divisions do. But the Bills played who they had to play. They played the Bucs, as well as playing the Colts and a few other good teams like the Titans and the Chiefs throughout the season. So I don't think it's that the Bills weren't ready for the Chiefs. I think it's that the NFL wasn't ready for the Bills and the Chiefs. And we still have our 1900s overtime rules being applied in 2022 to Patrick Mahomes and Josh Allen, which means that Josh Allen isn't even allowed to step on the field in overtime if Patrick Mahomes does what Patrick Mahomes did. And I think the Bills were on the unfortunate receiving end of those outdated NFL overtime rules. And although your take may have been correct, I don't want to give any too much credit away saying the Bills didn't have a great season. I think they had a heck of a season and were a really good team and had unfortunate circumstances end their season this year.
Well, I certainly had them making it to the Super Bowl, but ultimately I'm picking at straws here, so let's pick at some more straws, because by some technicality, we'll just leave it at that, I did quote-unquote predict Mike Zimmer and the now former Vikings GM being fired back in week 14. In reality, it was just me calling for Mike Zimmer and the GM of the Vikings to be fired, and what do you know? Later in the season, Mike Zimmer, Vikings GM, gone, goodbye. Who's replacing them this season, Zach?
Yeah, so after Mike Zimmer was fired, the Minnesota Vikings go out and get Kevin O'Connell from the Los Angeles Rams. After he's winning a Super Bowl, he's able to do his introduction with the Vikings pretty recently, and I think he's going to be a great hire for the Vikings. They've got plenty of pieces with Kirk Cousins, who's not great, but can make other receivers look great, like Justin Jefferson and Adam Thielen. If you've got Dalvin Cook in the backfield, he'll be able to make those guys look even better than they already are. And I think he'll be a great hire for the Vikings, and you were right about that. And then one other take that is similar to this that I think we can throw in here was the Sean Payton ordeal with the New Orleans Saints. We talked about him and whether he would be fired or let go, or what that situation was with the Saints. And after the season was over, Sean Payton is no longer head coach of the New Orleans Saints with their
be it for different
defensive
reasons.
coordinator. For his decision to step away, I think was a nice way of the Saints saying, hey, we're going to fire you, but you've been here for 15, 16 years. We don't want to fire you in that situation, so let's just publicly say that you're stepping away and we can terminate your contract and good luck elsewhere. So whether it is announced publicly that he was fired, I said that he was no longer going to be the New Orleans Saints coach, and well, now we're in the offseason and he is no longer the New Orleans Saints head coach. So there we go. Two new coaches in the NFL that we were able to both predict throughout the season.
I mean, we did also predict the Brian Flores firing and Matt Nagy firing, although those ones didn't seem too terribly, they weren't exactly obscure at the time that we had predicted those. Let's talk about something.
I don't think we said Brian Flores was getting fired in the middle of that 8-game winning streak, but
Certainly not.
yeah, he's with the Steelers now, so good luck to him with the Steelers, and hopefully he'll be back in coaching the team pretty soon.
Yeah, it's such a shame that he's been reduced down to having to get hired as a linebackers coach. He's certainly worth the payment as either a head coach, defensive coordinator, but alas, he's found himself a job. I'm sure they're paying him well, and hopefully he'll be able to climb up the ranks once again and get back to the glory that he was. It's just a shame that they fired him on a winning record, and now he's a linebackers coach. Let's talk about another really good take that you had this season. That's right, I brought some for you as well. Zach, you had said that only one of the Chiefs and Chargers would make the playoffs all the way back in week 11. And come around week 18, the Chargers have been eliminated from the playoffs. The Chiefs make the playoffs. The Raiders somehow make the playoffs. And sure enough, your take was completely correct. That thumbnail looks amazing nowadays.
Yeah, that was a heck of a take, and I think I got one person to thank for that, and I think Brandon Staley, the Chargers head coach, he might have been listening to the podcast when I said that and heard that they shouldn't make the playoffs, and he was like, well, then let me take a timeout and let the Raiders win this game. But no, both teams had inconsistent seasons. Chiefs started off inconsistent, and the Chargers started off great and then seemed to fall off as the season wore on, and everything came to a culmination in week 18 when they're 30 seconds away from making the playoffs, and then they don't make the playoffs pretty much by their own decision making, and now they'll look to reboot for next season. But hey, at least they make me look smart.
Well, you certainly shouldn't follow in Brandon Staley's footsteps in calling a timeout when it's going to piss off your opponent, but you should certainly follow Brandon Staley's advice when he tells you to subscribe to this channel, and stay tuned for the next Lockup Shutdown podcast. Let's move on to my favorite correct take of the season that I was called blasphemous for, because frankly, if you ask me, Sam Darnold is still a bum.
Sam Darnold is a bum. I'll say it. You've probably waited for years for me to say that, just trying to find a way for Sam Darnold to make it in the league one way or another, and I thought once the Panthers started 3-0, he was going to be able to find a way to make a career for himself, and just never got rolling again after that hot start for the Panthers. And I think I've finally had to give up on him. It got so bad for the Panthers. They were out there signing Cam Newton and benching Cam Newton and starting AFL, XFL, whatever you name. They're starting those quarterbacks, and Sam Darnold will probably walk into the sunset, fade into the sunset, whatever that quote is.
Fade into nothingness is what he's going to.
Yeah, he's fading off, and unfortunately he'll probably be forgotten pretty soon.
Future USFL GOAT, Sam Darnold. Let's talk about some of your best takes from this season, Zach. I know you've compiled a handful of your own.
Yeah, we talked about a few of them with Mike Zimmer and Sean Payton, and then we mentioned the Bengals going to Super Bowl, but one more I want to see if I can get you to budge on. If I just said that Sam Darnold is a bum and went off one of my quarterback takes, now that the season is over, will you join my side in saying that Mac Jones is going to be a good quarterback in the NFL during his career?
One of my worst takes from this season. It's the first on my list of bad takes that we were just about to move into. I'm going to say this. Listening to myself make predictions to tally up the numbers was fucking horrifying. I am not that high on Mac Jones, even still. But please, for the love of God past me, could you please stop underrating Mac Jones so much? Now listen. I feel that you're still overrating Mac Jones a little bit by calling him a good quarterback in the NFL. Mac Jones is going to be a decent quarterback in the NFL. He's going to fill his role. He's going to be okay at what he does. I just don't think Mac Jones is all that good of a quarterback. I don't think...
How about this one?
Ooh.
Let's pose a question of Alabama quarterbacks. Whose career projection do you have higher right now? Mac Jones or Tua Tagovailoa?
Bryce Young.
No answer to that question. That says a lot.
My answer to that question is Bryce Young, who I believe is going to be a very talented quarterback in the NFL.
But
Tua is...
that almost leads into my statement of I was going to say I would take Mac Jones, rookie Mac Jones season, over any of the seasons that all of the rookie quarterbacks coming into the NFL next season are going to have. I think none of them are going to have a season
and Matt
that
Corral?
Mac
Absolutely.
Jones. I don't think they're going to have a season that Mac Jones had this season.
I'll take Davis Mills' season over whatever Sam Howell, Matt Corral are about to do going into the next season. It's not going to be great looking for the league ahead, as we have only second-round talent at most when it comes to quarterbacks in this year's draft, and we'll certainly talk about that a bit more when we're moving on into the draft episode in about a month. So subscribe, post notifications, blah blah blah. You get the gist. We'll be uploading then. However, let's talk about another bad take. This time, one of yours, Zach.
There were a couple of those throughout the season.
In Week 10, because we already talked about the Week 4 really bad take, let's talk about your Week 10 bad take. And this is the only bad take I have on you for you other than the Week 4 take. Goodness gracious. In Week 10, you would double down on a take that you've brought to me a handful of times this season, seasons before. This is a take you've had for a while now, and it's still a really bad take, especially after the Super Bowl last week. Because in Week 10, the thumbnail, OBJ, is OBJ too toxic? You had doubled down on the take that OBJ was somehow the problem in Cleveland, as Baker Mayfield, who we now know is completely overrated as a quarterback, completely failed for the rest of the season, and OBJ scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl to get the Rams' momentum rolling.
Yeah. I guess today is the apology episode, you could call it. I will apologize to Odell Beckham Jr. after seeing everything he has done for the Rams in leading them to a Super Bowl. He has been probably better than I could have imagined for the Rams, and was able to get that touchdown in the Super Bowl for the Rams before he unfortunately tore his ACL, so I wish him a speedy recovery on that. But talking about what he did do for the Rams, he was monumental, and then winning the Super Bowl, he was talking about how much money they spent during the season to stack up that roster of talent they had with Von Miller and OBJ and every single other player they had on that roster. And credit to him, he did what he came in there for, and that was to get a Super Bowl for the Los Angeles Rams. So credit to him. And yeah, had that take for probably years, if not definitely a few weeks throughout most of the season. So that take has officially been retired into the bad take box, and hopefully we don't have to get any more bad takes involving OBJ.
Well, here's to hoping for Mac Jones to have a great sophomore season so we can have the greatest thumbnail and title of all time. We are sorry. We can make it look like an apology video. It'll be great. We're talking about the future now. So tell me, Zach, what's in store for us as we go in the offseason, the draft? What do we have in store for us?
Got a lot of question marks right now. Each team, I think, is still trying to figure out what they've got going on in this offseason. I think we're coming to the point now where most of the moving pieces have moved if they're gonna move, but between all the coaching changes and GM changes after the season, I think no one wanted to do anything too drastic just yet, and they're all preparing for the draft. So unless you're out in Vegas doing something stupid, then most everything else is still the same in NFL, but I don't expect it to stay that way for too much longer.
Well, we do have some rumors going around. Marquise Brown had unfollowed all the Ravens accounts and removed everything about his accounts that had anything to do with the Ravens. So
I thought the rumor was that Marquise Brown was supposed to stay in Baltimore for Antonio Brown to come in there and play together.
Yeah, well, apparently, who knows? Hollywood might want out. You have a situation with Kyler Murray that I believe you're a little bit more informed about.
Yep, Kyler Murray is rumored to be unhappy in Arizona, and I think the even bigger rumor is that Arizona is not happy with Kyler Murray more than Kyler not being happy with Arizona. So we'll have to see how that rumor shakes out, whether there's any truth behind it. But you know, this saying goes, where there's smoke, there's fire. So I don't think they're gonna start this rumor if there's not at least some level of truth to it. So we'll see how that situation is handled. But I know you were high on the Cardinals all season, saying they'll win just about every game they had this season. So we'll see if they can keep their key pieces together throughout the offseason, or if Kyler Murray will find himself somewhere else before next season starts.
Well, I did say earlier in the playoffs that I'm not high on the Arizona Cardinals going into the next season, and I don't believe they're going to make the playoffs at all next season. Let's talk about the final rumor that I'd like to talk about today. Obviously, these rumors have been coming up constantly all season long, especially earlier in the season before the trade deadline. You know exactly who I'm talking about here. It's Deshaun Watson. You'll never escape him.
I thought you were going to say Jackson Mahomes.
No, we're talking about Deshaun Watson here. So Brian Flores gets hired to the Pittsburgh Steelers, and Brian Flores says he's still very high on Deshaun Watson. What say you about the rumors of Deshaun Watson going to the Pittsburgh Steelers to replace Big Ben?
Tell you what, if Brian Flores is high on Deshaun Watson, it might be a match made in heaven. We know that there's been all sorts of knuckleheads that have gone to Pittsburgh and managed to find success between Le'Veon Bell, Antonio Brown. Big Ben could probably be filed in on that list, as well as Juju Smith-Schuster, and that's just in the last 5 years. So, yeah, that's just in the last 3 or 4 years. You could name all those names, not even looking in too far in the past. But if Deshaun Watson goes there, they're in need of a quarterback, and Brian Flores at least knows him a little bit and was trying to get him for the Dolphins, allegedly. So we'll see if he ends up going to the Steelers, but I know Brian Flores is the linebackers coach, so I'm sure there'll have to be a few other people that would have to be convinced on getting Deshaun Watson as well, besides the linebacker coach of the Steelers.
Well, you've certainly convinced me that Mike Tomlin is capable of taking care of any drama that goes on, so we can certainly expect to see some different rumors play out throughout the offseason, and we'll give our opinions on those whenever. But for now, I think that's all we have time for our recap episode. How are we feeling about this one, Zach? Whole season's done and over with.
It was a good, productive episode. I guess this is the final culmination of the season 1 of the Lockup Shutdown podcast.
Yeah.
Get our conclusion to season 1 this episode, and now we move on to season 2. Hopefully keep trying to improve. If you got any improvements, comment them below. But yeah, I think that's about it for season 1 of the Lockup Shutdown podcast. Made it through with relatively no bumps in the roads and pretty smooth, I would say.
Heck yeah, I'm absolutely looking forward to what we have in store for us next season, but before then, we'll have to talk about the draft and the off-season and all the other rumors that might spark up throughout the off-season. We'll maybe even throw in some interesting extracurricular episodes in there, but for the time being, on this wonderful season of the Lockup Shutdown podcasts, it's time for us to lock up and shut down.